What's going on, everybody? We're back in the garage. We have tumbled down the rabbit hole that is this truck, but we're doing good. So this is the first time back on the garage. Today is New Year's Eve, so happy New Year's to you guys. Merry Christmas. My furnace decided to take the holidays off, so not much work going on out here because that little garage heater down there, I used that to heat my house for a few days until I could get the part to fix that. But we are back up and running. Heater's out here heating up the garage, so we're jumping back in this project and we're gonna get cooking on this thing. So if you've been following along with it, you'll know that we did the rear axle flip kit to drop the rear end. We went down 4 inches in the rear. And again, we followed the body line all the way up. And that's kind of where we hit a snag on this thing. So this truck, we're talking, it's a ½ inch difference between the back to the front. So I mean, it is killer level. Problem is, it's kind of an optical illusion. Let me show you what we're talking about. So when I measure from here to the ground, it's 48.5 inches. Perfect. I mean, it's got a killer look to it. Doesn't come up that high. Nice look. Follow this body line all the way up here. When I measure from here to the ground, it's 49 inches. So you're talking just a ½ inch difference between the front to the back. But this thing looks like it's just sagging hard because the wheel gap. I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but it's a mess. But when we measure it down, you can clearly see wheel gap here versus wheel gap up here. Way different. So it literally looks like you went out and just dumped a whole bunch of sand or rock in the back of this thing and just bottomed it out. So we're gonna fix that today. How are we gonna do it? Of course, we bought more parts. So we went with these. These are the 2-inch drop springs from Max Trac. Same company we went with for the rear axle flip kit. Also, same company we're gonna have to go with for the rear shocks. I did send out some emails to some companies that sell just shocks like crazy. Told them the specs that I needed, what I was looking for, what I had done, what kind of truck it is. Haven't heard anything back. So unfortunately, we're not gonna have Monroe's all the way around. It's just kind of how I liked it because I like those shocks. They rode nice. So we're going to keep the front shocks factory spec Monroe's. I've heard a few sites, people saying that they don't bottom out with the new springs in there, so we should be good with that. When I went with the 5-inch drop in the rear, I could get on the back and bounce on it, and you could hear the shocks bottom out really easily. So we raised it up, we went with a 4-inch drop on it, leveled it out. Now when you bounce on the back, it takes a lot more to get them to bottom out with the factory length shocks. I am gonna change them out because I don't want to damage anything. So we're gonna go with the Max Trac shocks. They're already spec'd out and everything, so we're just gonna give them a shot, put them in there and see how they run. I haven't ordered those yet, but it's gonna have to happen. As far as the fronts go, like I said, we're gonna keep the factory spec Monroe's. We're just gonna swap these springs out. We're also gonna go ahead, we're gonna throw this in. This is that bolt for the lower control arm bolt that I had to cut out and beat out of there with the old one. New bolts here, we're gonna go ahead and put that one in too and get this all buttoned up. Still gotta mess with the sway bar up in the front, but that shouldn't be terrible. Fingers crossed, who knows. So let's get this thing on jack stands and start pulling this apart and get these swapped out. Bring that front end down a little bit, and hopefully this will be the end project of this for now, and then we can switch over to do like interior stuff. But it's winter time. I want to get the Jeep in here. I got tons of projects for it. Got to get back on that thing because this spring I'm hitting the trails. We're going out on weekends. We're having fun with it. But obviously this thing is taking up all my space. So let's get started. All right, well, after a bit of a little adventure mishap, we got, oh, come on. Now this thing wants to turn on. No, you're done. We got everything out. Popping this out seemed to be a little more difficult than normal, but that's fine. It came out. The big problem I had, the brand new studs that are pressed in to this new control arm, this one here had popped loose. So I was basically trying to take this whole assembly out with the shock still in there. And then while lowering this down, when it finally all kicked out, this thing swung around and you saw, put a lot of stress on the brake line. Now, I'm pretty sure that if I was able to get the shock out of there, then I could slowly drop this thing down while holding on to everything instead of like worrying about where the shock is and not having it bind up inside the spring and pulling everything down. You can keep a handle on all this so it doesn't want to yank this out of your, your grasp or whatever and possibly stretch or damage the hose. But everything seems good. I've checked it all over. Just kind of slung this back up in here now to hold it for now, because like I said, we still got to pop that old bolt out and put a new one in. And let me show you the springs here. You can see the old versus new. It is shorter, which is good. Hopefully the spring rates are about the same, if not better. So with that drop in there, this thing isn't all bouncing around and stuff. So I'm sure they've done the math on it. I'm not good at math, so I'm just gonna take their word for it. But, boy, as far as this goes, all we're gonna do now, we're gonna switch the bolt, put the new spring in, and slide the shock in once all that's done, and we'll be good to go. Like I said, my biggest problem was the shock. I'd taken the lower bolts out, the one just came loose, and the stud had come out. So I got that hammered back in there. Should go together a lot easier than it came apart. And off to the other side. So let's keep going. All right, so I know it's hard to see, it's dark, and I'm not good with lighting, but I put a little bit of tension on the control arm here so that the bolt spins freely. Like I said, all this was just loose because I knew I was going to be replacing it anyhow. I'm going to get this one out. We'll size up the new one because I did buy multiple lengths of these. This way we can get the right one in there. So here's my temporary fix one, and here's the new one. These are pretty much the same length, and I did like the length of that one, so we'll go ahead and just use this length that we have here. Also, to not have this problem again, anti-seize is our friend. We're gonna put some on the threads. We'll also put something down the main portion here, because that's what happened the last time with the original one. This part here had seized up inside of there, and that was a disaster. So good coating on there, should be good. Don't forget, lower control arm bolt, torque to 125 foot-pounds. All right, everything's going back together. Upper ball joint bolt gets torqued to 60 foot-pounds. Let's get that done. I did read the instructions that sometimes putting these drop springs in, you do have to cut or modify the bump stop on it. This one, it's pretty close. We're just gonna have to put it together and see what happens. Spring looks good, shock went in good. We'll tighten up the top bolt on the shock, get everything all buttoned up. All right, well, we're on the tiny side of the garage now. We got this thing all jacked up, set up. I am gonna be using a couple bungee cords this time to hold everything in place. Unlike you saw on the other side where everything kind of fell over on me. I'm hoping the shock comes out okay. I think that was a hang up that I had, was the shock was in there and it was just a mess. But I mean, you guys might call it lazy. I call it 100%, you're correct. I just don't want to have to tear everything apart to get the spring out. So we're just gonna go ahead and do the same thing we did over here. Just be a little more careful this time. All right, well, we got the coil out. Put the nut back on it just to kind of hold everything in place. We are reusing the insulators for these things. Stops it from rattling around and clunking. So all you gotta do is just line up underneath. You can kind of see where the spring obviously was sitting underneath. There's a groove. Just line it up in there. Same thing with the bottom down here. There's a spot down there in the cup that's notched out. That's where the coil spring will rest in there. Just make sure it's all lined up. You know, getting this thing apart, it's always sketchy because you're just waiting for something to go off right in your face. They do make coil spring compressors and they're supposed to use straps or chains or whatever, but you know, we just kind of wing it around here and everything seems to work out. I'm still alive, so let's get this apart, get it back together, and get it on the ground and see how she looks, huh? What do you say? All right, so according to the directions, normally your bump stops are right in here. It says by putting these coils in, you might have to trim them. We're going with the Bluetooth ones, so that's good. Looks pretty good to me, so should be all right. All right, well, we're back. It's the next day. Last night it just got to be too dark to get this thing outside to see how it really looked. So as far as the truck goes for the measurements, I went through and rechecked everything. So from here to the ground, it was 36.5, and now it's 34.5. Now I know they say to measure from here to like the bottom of the lip of the rim. It's going to be your best measurement, but I haven't adjusted any air pressure. I had put the same tires on the same side, so I'm just going to base that off of that. But we did get our full 2-inch drop. I'm very happy with it. This really kind of tucked in the wheels, made them look a lot better. It added just a slight little rake from the back to the front rather than that really drastic look that Dodge always has. I'm pleased with it. I really like it. And I can't wait to get the other rims and tires for it, but I got to save up my money. And right now that's not going to happen because we got Jeep stuff to do. So as far as the kit goes, it was just the front coil springs on this one. Very simple to put in. I did it the lazy man way. I left everything attached. A lot of the times people recommend you got to take the brake caliper off, take everything off, and then it's a lot easier to work with, which that's true, but I wanted to save time and cut corners, and it worked out fine for me. Just make sure, please, if you're going to do something like this, have a jack underneath that lower control arm, because once you pop that top ball joint loose, remember, that thing's going to come spring loading down, and you're going to catch a coil to the face. So I don't want that happening to anybody. Always use caution, all that kind of good stuff, words and warnings. You know what I'm saying. So, really the only thing left on this project now is get that front sway bar all buttoned up, all the new bushings, the new end links and everything. I'm going to do that, and then I'll wind up taking it out, having the tie rods replaced while I'm having the alignment done. And this thing should be ready to go. So, but yeah, I'm really happy with it. Looks really good. Like I said, this thing, it just kind of had this weird look to it where even with the back being down so much, You know, it still looked high up in the front, but it was all about the wheel gap. It was just like kind of like one of those optical illusions. And I know. It's hard to measure wheel gap back here when you got really no kind of baseline to go off of, but it works, looks good. Let's get this thing out of here, show you what it looks like, and where you started on that Jeep. Springtime's coming. I got a lot of projects I want to get done with it, so yeah, I'm happy. I like it. Can't wait to get this thing out on the road, but I'm not going to drive it yet until I get the alignment done, because I don't want to start eating everything up and, you know, all that kind of good stuff. So, but that'll do it. As always, you guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, make sure you're subscribed to the channel by clicking right down here. Don't want to miss any new episodes, do you? Also, until then, check out one of these two. It's good stuff.